Thank you very much. It's my privilege. Of course, I will start. I mean, this is the title. Title has almost 3 titles in itself. So that's the reason why I will start with why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. But before I do, I just want to thank my dear friend Valdis. I mean, and I took some notes from his speech. Of course, I wasn't on time to come in here to listen Prime Minister Brown, who I'm sure had excellent thoughts about education. And I'll say a few words about it maybe in this context. Tomorrow you will have a privilege to hear some other people that we know together, Valdis and myself, like President Rosen Plevnevliev. He's very interesting. I'm don't feel so good that I'm going to be back home tomorrow, so I won't be able to listen to him. But anyway, I strongly recommend you to be there. And of course, I want to thank Mark, I mean, who put such an interesting group of people together, people who are right now doing the things in their countries in ministerial and governmental positions, people who used to do the things. And of course, I see some people in here, younger people who one day will be talking like us. When you were like us, then you will be like us in the days that will come, but different parts of the world. So I'm very, very honored and privileged that I have such a privilege to talk to such a people like you. Now, among other things, of course, I will talk about Balkan and Bosnia perspective, about something which is, I think, one of the key issues of today's world, which is how to make some kind of balance in between 3 major players in our life: people, planet, and production. How to make cohabitation in between these 3 things. So that's the reason why we'll be talking about something which we call a new paradigm for sustainable development, but from the shared society and environmental sustainability perspective. Among other things, I'm a member of the organization, very interesting organization, Club de Madrid, which is an association of about 100 former heads of states and governments, who, among other things, all of us were democratically elected, just as Valdis was talking about. And I just had a privilege last year to chair one working group with my dear friend, President of Costa Rica, Laura Chinchilla, and 18 people from all parts of the world, from UN, World Bank, OECD, academic community, NGOs. And we put together one report that was actually talking about what I'm talking about to you today. Now, first, why these things I consider very important. Why? First thing is because we live in a time which I sometimes explain as, call it global paradox of our progress and prosperity. When Berlin Wall fell down just a few kilometers from here, we expected the new world. And of course, we have different world today than it was almost 30 years ago. But when Berlin Wall fell down, we all thought that the future is coming. The paradise is coming. We had Fukuyama who was talking about the end of history. What is now 30 years later? Today, when you look at the GDP of globe, you can see that today the globe is producing 4 times more wealth than at that time. So we are 4 times richer. If you look at the technology, some serious surveys and researchers are saying that technology-wise, we are 3 times more powerful today than we used to be at that time. I'm first generation of computer scientists educated in my country, and from the computer science perspective, you can see from the Moore's law that the power of computing, processing power of computers is actually doubling every year and a half or 2 years. From that perspective, you can say that today we are 300 times more powerful in technology sense, in sense of computers. Today, the smartphones that we all have are actually the whole world in our pockets. But the smartphone will never be as smart as us, and we are not supposed to be trying to be as smart as a smartphone, because we are much more than that. But that's another story. When you look at the amount of knowledge today, if you would, let's say, put all knowledge that was accumulated since the Stone Age until Berlin Wall falling down, if you would put it in a box of 1 cubic meter, some researchers are calculating, estimating that in the last 30 years, mankind produced another cubic meter of knowledge. So we are 2 times more smarter than when Berlin was falling down. 2 times more countries and people live in what is called democracy. If democracy is having free elections. Democracy is much more. But from that old stereotype perspective, 2 times more people live today in democracy than at that time. So see, do we really live in paradise? Do we really live in a world that is 2 times smarter than it used to be? Do we live in a world that is 4 times richer than it used to be 30 years ago? When our dear friend Antonio Guterres walked in the office of the High Representative for Refugees 10 years ago, he did a marvelous job. But he thought that he will almost dismiss the need for his office. In the meantime, the number of refugees doubled. When you look from 15 years ago, on September 11, today the cost of terrorism is about 15 times bigger. Berlin Wall fell down, but some people are saying that today in between 40 countries and inside 40 countries we have 60 different walls. Not only in the Middle East, not only in Syria. So that's what I call global paradox of our prosperity. We are smarter, richer, powerful, but we are in a mess. Okay? So that's first why. The second why is sense of urgency. I mean, we are really, sometimes it looks like we are driving to hit the wall in Ferrari. Red Ferrari, but directly to the concrete wall. So speed of change is like speed of that Ferrari. But sense of urgency is telling us that we have to do something with it. And to try really hit the real road, highway for the Ferrari that we have around. Third reason why is because today we are full of fears because of different reasons. When you open whatever media open, you get frightened. But at the same time, we have more hopes than we ever had before. And that knowledge and technology and power of wealth that we have is telling us that we have a means to do it, to do something much better than we are today. That's the reason why we think that, and why I do really want to share with you, that we need some kind of new progressive paradigm of partnership of people, planet, and production of profit, call it that way. And last why is actually we have no plan B. There's no alternative. Simply there is no alternative. So how we will tackle those things? We will tackle that one of the cancers that we are witnessing is today something which I call encapsulated one encapsulated word, inequality. Inequality. But not inequality in sense of how much money who has in his pocket. How much wealth is behind you. It's inequality along the different dimensions. And we have to tackle those dimensions of inequality. First one is social inequality. Inclusive society versus exclusive society. Segregated society versus shared society. So our inequality in social sense is becoming question number one. Shall we, as Valdis was saying, I mean, Mexicans will come, regardless of the height of the wall, or whatever migrants. The history of the humankind is the history of migrations, and that's not going to be stopped. So that's the reason why inclusion is the first thing that we have to tackle. Do we really think that inside this world we have to build another walls and walls and walls and inside micro-societies in every part of the world? Is it possible? First, is it right? But if you think it's right, then ask yourself, is it possible? It's not possible. First, it's not right, and it's not possible. Second is economic inequality, which is income. Income inequality, Oxfam study, maybe some of you are familiar with it, that is talking about inequality for decades, for years. They are publishing that. Usually they are publishing that in the eve of Davos Forum. Last year, the study said that in the United States of America, 8 people were having as much wealth as half of the less poor America. 8 people. 8 years ago, when Obama walked into the White House on hope, on change, on hitting the causes of inequality, and he really did an enormous job. But at the same time, when he walked in the White House, Oxfam report said that 159 Americans had as half of America. So he was trying to do something, and 8 years later, not 159, but 8 people had as much as half of America. You can go to the Oxfam, I think, site, and you will see that this year report, just for 1 year, 3 Americans have as much as half of America. New guy walked into the White House, and he has a plan. He'll fix it. And he did fix it. Not 8, only 3 people. If you take a look at the statistics about it, from in the last 10 years, from 2006 to 2015, the average income rate of ordinary workers was going 2% annually, okay? The billionaires' wealth, income, in those 10 years was growing averagely annually 13% per year, okay? And you can take Indonesia, you can take Brazil, you can take whatever country, you can take not only America, you will see that that's something that's going in the wrong direction. Injustice is another I in equality. It's about legal inequality, I won't talk about it. Identity, political. Do we really, is democracy about protecting different identities, or democracy is about exterminating identities that are not like yours? Valdez said rightly that democracy is, in full-size, full-scale democracy, is the system in which nationalism and populism does not fly, or should not. But I came from the country which lived for hundreds of years under the Ottoman Empire, and then for decades we lived under the Austro-Hungarian Empire, so 2 different empires. And then Kingdom of Yugoslavia, then under fascism, then under communism, and we lived in one society. We were Muslims, Christians, Orthodox, Catholics, Jews, but under those historical circumstances, we lived in one society. And then after Berlin Wall fell down, we got democracy, and someone said, you cannot live in one society. You have to divide yourself. You have to kill yourself if you don't like each other. Why don't you like each other? Well, because you have different names. I remember, it was not a billion years ago when I was going to, in the middle of the Bosnian War, talking about what is happening over there. And I remember the people from Middle East, from South Africa, they were asking me, when you see each other, I mean, that war, do you know who is who? I said, no, I mean, we are all, It says, well, when you start talking, do you know who is who? I said, no. I said, well, then, when you ask your friend or your acquaintance on the street, what's your name? Do you know? Well, not necessarily. And at once they said, so how do you know how to kill each other? How do you know how to kill? You have the same color, you have the same language, you have the same names. So that's something which we have to, and I'm sure that when democracy comes, a next generation of democracy, not this generation of democracy, next generation of democracy as a global thing. Because all current established democracies have little hiccups, or at least they have a little flu when it comes to populism and nationalism. But that's another story. Interconnectivity, which is technological equality, insecurity, physical, and finally innovation and knowledge. Now, we have a saying, when we have to do it right now. We have to start doing it now because we will have no time. The major race we are running against is race against time. And who has to do it? Not you or me or whoever, but the only people who can do it is all of us. And that's the major difference. We have to create a group of people, committed people, regardless of their names, their backgrounds, their professions, whatever, parts of the world, experiences, that we believe that there is no plan B for the planet, not for any individual country, because no individual country is going to survive if we don't survive as a mankind because of technological, economical, and knowledge progress. Because we will be so smart, so technologically powerful, and so economically powerful that we'll be able to start exterminating each other. So that's the reason, if the question is who will, and I have one old saying that we have in here, in my country, when you have a problem, when people start debating about something, we have a saying, if there is a will, then there is a way. If people really want to do something, they can do it. But the question is, as Valdez was talking about, trust and respect and trust. You cannot do anything if there is no mutual trust, if we don't share the same goals. Speaking about goals, you're familiar with Sustainable Development Goals. So this is the major breakthrough that happened last year or 2 years ago, because after Millennium Goals, I mean, world finally came to the conclusion that we can do something. There's no better plan for the planet than this one. The biggest trick is the last one, partnership for the goals, which is actually how to make it alive. And that's the thing that we have to talk about. Now, why and where we are, in what stage we are today, I just want to give you a little example of what are the problems, how the serious people see what are the problems today. I took top 5 global risks in terms of likelihood in 2018 in a survey that was just published last month. Number 1, the biggest global threat presented in Davos was extreme weather conditions. That's the biggest threat. Second one is natural disasters. The third one, cyber attacks. The fourth one, data fraud and theft. And the fifth one, failure of climate change mitigation adaptation. You see, out of 5 biggest risks, 3 are dealing with nature and 2 are dealing with computers. But in this parentheses in here, just to give you an idea, I mean, I'll tell you about it. I mean, you probably don't see it. You see, it says extreme weather conditions, 1, first place, and then it says 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, which means that last year it was also number 1. 2 years ago it was second place, second place, second place. Natural disaster was last year 3rd, year 2 years ago 5th. In previous years it was not in the top 5. Cyber attacks, there were no place for 3 years. Suddenly they came to number 3. Data fraud, last year was 5th, now it's 4th, but it was not among, people are not caring about it. Failure of climate change, same. Now, I made a list in here, the things that in the last 5 years were in the top 5. Large-scale involuntary migration, this year stepped down to number 6. Last year was 2, 2 years ago was 1, and 3 years before there was not in top 5. So obviously migration was hit. Eurosong contest winner. 2 years ago, then went number 2, and now it's getting out because computers and climate is putting migrants on a next. Large-scale terrorist attacks. Now it's 8, last year was 4. Failure of national governance. 3 years ago it was 3rd ranked, now it's 14. Interstate conflicts with regional consequences, 15. It used to be on top 5, but no more. High structural unemployment, it used to be 3rd, 5th, now it's 17. Who knows where? It's going down. State collapse crisis, income disparity. Income disparity was 5 years ago number 1 threat, according to the people who are gathering and convening in Davos. And income disparity is going worse, and it went to number 19 as a threat. You know why? Because other threats were bigger. But income is actually just the fever of the problem that we have. And that's something we have to do something. So, but this is very interesting data saying about geopolitical worries. Do you think that in 2018 the risk presented by the following issues will decrease or increase compared in 2017? It's a very interesting thing. First one is political and economic confrontation between the major powers. 97% of people think that it will be worse. The red, just to have the red one is being worse. This almost non-existing blue one, it's going to be better. So you did everything from regional conflicts driving major powers, erosion of multilateral trade rules and agreements, loss of confidence, collective security alliances. Everything is going from 70% over 3, 75% over 2, 78% over 1. It looks like people realizing that we have a problem. And these are decision makers who are making predictions. It looks like we have fears, but it looks like they have bigger fears because they know what's going on. I'll skip over this one. So let's start to say where we are living in. What has changed in the last period since Berlin Wall happened? In old time, after Berlin Wall fall down, we thought that we live in stability. We thought that we live in time of certainty. We thought that everything is simple. We had answers for everything. We saw it very clearly, and clarity was there. But what happened in the last 20, 25 years? Stability was replaced with volatility, certainty with uncertainty, simplicity with complexity, and clarity with ambiguity. Everything is getting messy and more complicated and less visible, and that's it. So the only way to get out is not to be smarter, in sense of having more data, in sense of being smart as your smartphone. I mean, you don't have to go to ask Google or shake Google. I mean, you can see over there everything. But the question is what you're going to do with it. So that's the reason why we need new type of approach. We have to be driven much more by visioning and tackle volatility. Uncertainty we have to tackle with understanding. To be understanding, it doesn't mean that you can do something, but you have to understand the thing. You have to understand other people if you want to talk with them. If you want to fight with them, first try to understand them. Maybe you'll stop fighting them when you understand them. And they will maybe not be afraid of you when they understand you. Complexity should be replaced with visibility. And we have to be more listening and looking than talking to everyone else what is happening. And of course, agility is the last point. Of course, that's the precondition for harmony. What is the problem today is that we have something which I call the disbalance in between strategies, structures that support those strategies, and culture that everything is drowned into. And in Silicon Valley, there used to be a good phrase a few years ago saying, we live in a time in which culture eats strategy for breakfast. Which means that, basically speaking, whatever strategy you do, they're live people who have to do with it. And they live in a certain environment. And today they are so connected with interconnectivity, with Facebooks, with everything, that I mean the culture that is getting around us, and especially in a world in which so many of us are meeting people who are not like us, in a world of differences. This concept of, let's say, culture is actually destroying every strategy. So this is just very little thing. What I'm trying to say is that strategy, structure, and culture. By strategy, I mean it's strategy is actually direction in which you are going, from vision to mission, objectives. Then the structure is actually organizational design that is supporting that strategy. And then of course you have a culture. Culture is climate in which you live, mindset, attitudes, beliefs, and values. Basically speaking, you can make whatever strategy you want to, but if organizational structure is not supporting it, you have very small part in which they are meeting, and that's the reason why it won't fly. But the culture is actually the biggest ball on the field. The culture, as much as culture aligns with strategy and organization, that much you have chance to succeed. So that's the reason why I love to say this here in this center that's dealing actually with cultural diplomacy. So this is the reason why I want to share this little part of Olympic circles, only 3. Strategy, structure, and culture. So as much as these 3 things align, we have chance to do something. And what we came to was something which I called Greek temple approach to what do we need, how do we want to make that new partnership, new paradigm of partnership between people and planet and a production. The first, our general idea is to have, in a Greek temple context, we are looking for the roof of progress that will shelter us from the thunders, from the sun, from the rains, from the whatever. And in order to have a roof, you have to have certain pillars. And major pillars of that progress are sustainable shared society, sustainable development, and sustainable environment. Sustainable environment is actually about ecology. It's about resources. We have to care about them. Sustainable development is actually about business and efficiency, and economy generally speaking. And of course, sustainable shared society is about people and about communities. But you cannot put the pillar on a sand. You have to put the pillar on certain fundament. And fundamentals actually are values and institutions. That's first element of your values. Everything starts it has to end, it has to start, but it has to end with the values. The moment that European Union lost its credo, or started losing its credo, is the period and moment in which European Union started to decline. And now when it's coming back to unity and diversity credo, and as much as European Union is more about unity and diversity, European Union has a chance to be our common home. So that's the reason why values is not about the declaration. Values is about what you think and what you have in your heart, what is the fact and what is your perception. And then, what do you say? And then, what do you do? And finally, the most important, do you live along those values? So that's the major fundament of those pillars. The second one is inclusion and justice. Inclusion and justice is basically speaking why people are fighting all over the world, why people are angry in different parts of the world, for different reasons. But the major reason is you're hitting their dignity. You're hitting their dignity. And dignity is actually the core of every struggle that we have. And dignity is about actually justice, and dignity is about inclusion. Fighting for dignity is fighting for inclusion and fighting for justice. And the third element is governing and policies. I mean, in order to do everything, someone has to be in the driver's seat and know where's the map and go and drive. So that's the reason why we're... I won't talk about education because Gordon Brown talked about it very much, but I think that, oh, by the way, that's a good point that I start here. This fundament pillars and roof, they are today actually surrounded with something which is information technology and interconnectivity. And this is completely changing the ball game. Without interconnectivity and without information technology, this Greek temple would be in Greek in Athens, and it would be in ruins. But at the same time, the major cloud is not information technology and interconnectivity. The major cloud is actually knowledge and education. And that's the reason why education is actually the first and last point for everything. And I strongly recommend you to go through this report that we made. You can find it on Club de Madrid website. It was sharing our planet today and tomorrow and share society's contribution to Agenda 2030. The group of 20 of us actually made this report in which we very much structured actually what I was trying to talk to you. And this is the key messages are given over there. There is a need for new paradigm which I established. I just explained in here shortly. But this shared society approach is actually talking about shared values, shared leadership, and practically shared society. And the bottom line is shared future. So the word shared is actually, you require all these things together. And I will, after this, I will just finish with what's happening in Balkan, what is happening in the Western Balkan, what is happening in my country, what are lessons that I came to. But before that, I will give you one little chart that is talking about relationship in between attitude and ability. We saw how the pessimistic about 2018 were top people who were gathering in Davos compared to 2017. But this is my favorite Gallup survey, 2 years old, made in different parts of the world with very simple question to the people all over the world. When your children today become grown up, do you think that they will live in better economic environment than they do today? This was basically speaking the survey that was looking for how much optimistic people are about their future. And what was extremely interesting, the most pessimistic ones are Europeans. Europeans think that 64% their kids will live in a worse world, and only 28% are optimistic. The next pessimists are Americans, 60 to 32. So basically speaking, in Europe and America, 2 pessimists are over 1 optimist. But the interesting thing is, Latin America, they really samba rumba. I mean, they really do look the world better. It doesn't mean that they're in better shape. People in Africa, they are 2 times more optimistic than pessimistic. People in Asia Pacific are also 2 times more optimistic than pessimistic. People in Middle East are comme ci, comme ça. They have reason to be pessimistic, but they are still less pessimistic than Europeans and Americans. I'm coming to my very important conclusion. It's attitude versus ability. And I'll support it with a very good study. I remember I loved this study. 3-4 years ago, I found one study in a serious journal that was published, making a survey about the relation between attitude and ability in American top companies after they succeeded. So basically speaking, the measure was, in your success, what was more important, your attitude that you will succeed, or your ability? It doesn't mean that you can be disabled and agility will, and optimistic it will save you. But it actually shows what is more important. Of course you have to be capable to do something, but the question is, what is your attitude? And the study showed remarkable thing, that attitude won ability 7-1. 7-1. So without, and I really believe in the future of the world, because I think that people in disprivileged parts of the world, like Latin America, like Asia, like Africa, they are more optimistic. They have better attitude about their future. And that may save us all. So if people are coming from different parts of the world, and here in Europe, they are coming with attitude. And that attitude may help us in Europe to be more optimistic and be more fresh again. So when it comes to my country, we have Southeastern Europe 2020, we have European 2020 agenda, we have SDGs 2030, but a few weeks ago there was a very good initiative, and Valdis was talking about enlargement, because we have a black hole or missing link in Europe, which is Southeastern Europe, which is 5 or 6 countries of European Union, Serbia, Croatia is there. Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia, Albania, Macedonia, and Kosovo. Those 6 countries are trying to get in. And there is very new initiative of European Union from 2 weeks ago that they're offering chance to Western Balkan to end their path to European Union by 2025. And I called it EU Plus, because EU without enlargement is going to be stopped, and it's European Union without enlargement is like think that you can be on a bicycle without riding it. So if you want to be on your bicycle, you have to ride. And European Union is about enlargement through the values and through the strengthening of your values in European Union and in your neighbors. In that context, I think it is very important that we have new type of leadership, but that European plus, EU plus 2025 requires leadership for sustainable development and shared society. And my very final point, leadership is position. But leadership is position, in order to be leader, and leadership is about position. Someone is head of the state, head of the government, but head of the state, head of the government is not no one else but the coach of the team. And leadership is about right team. You can be Mourinho or Zidane, but if you don't have right people, and if you don't assemble right people, and if you don't give them a good plan, and if you don't move them together, you can be third league in the middle of the nowhere Mourinho, and you are not going to hit the sky. So you have to have a team. And that's what leadership is about. Leadership is about having a team, not which is position as a leader, but I call it 11 Ps, and that's that team. On a goal, we have principles. The team of the leadership is about principles. Without principles, without values, forget about leadership. If you do something which you don't believe in, you may win, and then what? So it's better to lose in something which you believe in than to win in something that you don't believe in. That's what values are about. So on your goal, you have values. The last line of defense are the values and principles. Number 2 in my team is people. You have to involve people. You have to have potential sense of resources, knowledge, innovation. You have to have leadership is about progress, moving forward. Leadership is about partnership. You cannot do it without everyone being connected. You cannot do it without performance. You have to have right performance. You cannot do it without seeing that as a process, because leadership is not about event. I won elections. No, no, no. You won elections because you established the process. And if you stop the process, you better don't win elections. Next one is persistence. Persistence is about, leadership is about winning, about losing, and about standing up when you lose. It's more about learning through standing to losing than about learning through winning. People who learn only in winning, it's a question of moment when they are going to lose and they won't be able to stand up. So it's important to learn something. Number 9 is product. You have to make a goal. You have to have a deliverable. You have to have product. And of course, you have to have a plan for it. And last but not the least, the most important thing in leadership, the most important thing in my life was something, and in everyone's life, and in your life, regardless of what you do, you have to have a passion for what you work. You have to have passion. Because without passion for work, you will lose your passion for life. And when you lose your passion for life, I don't know why you work at all. But that's another topic. So, thank you. I just am on time.
Thank you, Prime Minister, the audience. So we can go directly for the questions. Please. Questions? Yes?
Hi, my name's Aliena. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting what you said about the priorities at Davos. What do you think needs to be done to sort of realign the priorities, or what does it take to realign the priorities to then address issues that can target more people? And we've been hearing lots of issues today, and the economy is always a front runner, but how do you make education, for example, more of a priority and bring that to the agenda?
In democracies, people who run the country are people who are elected. And they are elected because they motivate people to vote for them. And what they do when they get elected, in the process of being elected, they have plans, they have programs, and they have principles, and they want to do something. But when they step in the office, of course they try to do, at least most of them. But most of them, that's my experience, unfortunately, when you get in your office, sometimes you get run by the problems that you haven't thought about. And most of the people who are in office, they actually function not along their plans and programs, but along the pressure that they have from the real life. And from the pressure they have from the electorate. And in democracies, they don't have electorate, but they're afraid that people will get on the street and they will kill them over there in the palace. So again, it's about pressure. So most politicians work, I'm coming back to your, I'm just circling around to get you the real answer. The answer is we have to put the pressure on people who are in driver's seat. And that's the reason why I'm saying that we can do it only all of us together. Because power of people today is bigger than ever, because of technology, because of communication, because of social media, because everyone knows everything what's happening on the world. You cannot fool the people. You cannot stop the internet. You can ban the Google, but I mean, of course, the Google will come swimming around the wall. So my point is how to prioritize different priorities. Well, it's simply by putting pressure on the people that are decision makers. And current president of commission, I remember a few years ago, he was so pissed when journalists were asking why he doesn't do this, why he doesn't do that, and why he doesn't do this and that, and so on. And he said, young man, why do you lecture me what I should do? Of course I know what I should do, but I don't know how to win elections after I do it. Okay? So basically speaking, we have to put the pressure on everyone to do what they should do and threaten them if they don't do what they should do, then they will lose elections. But populists are good in it, and that's another story.
Yeah, I would like just to make your key components of your team, let's say. You mentioned, for example, Mourinho or Zidane, and listening for your words from you, that it was very nice and it's fully true. You look like more inspired by Guardiola than the others. And the other part of the job, you can, the other part that this is important, you can have just the opposite as well. Like, for example, Paris with the Emery. You can have a very good team, but the leadership could be awful, and the results, you can lose a lot of potential. That way, I think.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's the reason why, in order to lead people, you have to be in position. So that's the reason why I didn't put the chart on this chart, capital P, which is position, which is actually Guardiola, right? Or if you push me too hard, I will tell you but he's retired. Alan Ferguson, Ferguson is the mastermind as far as I'm concerned, so I won't debate in that area because you're probably more familiar with it. But Ferguson is actually the example of the coach who survived what he did survive, and he was making individuals, but he kept making and building up his team as a team. So you know very well that at a certain period of time, Ferguson did not have the best players, but he was actually the coach number one and most decorated one in that part of the world and our part of the world. So you're absolutely right. It requires position. You have to be in position. Well, let me put it this way. When I say position, I remember it was a long time ago, when my party was getting accepted in Socialist International. It was in Paris. And I remember I was watching, we had the New Millennium Declaration, and everyone was talking about values, what we should do. And then Brown's predecessor, Tony Blair, he had the excellent speech, but then when he wrapped up everything about the values and principles, everything, he said, oh, one more thing, I just almost forgot to say. And then he said something which was not scripted. He said, look, we are here to define our visions, missions, and everything, and values, which is okay. But we are running the parties, and parties are tools to get in power to change your countries. So don't forget your principles, don't forget your values, but don't forget to win elections. Okay? So that's the reason why, in order to have a leadership skills, you have to be in position. So I'm not saying that Guardiola is more important or less important than Messi, but they are like H2O. You cannot drink oxygen and you cannot drink hydrogen.
Well,
You have to drink water.
Apparently, with Tony Blair, it could be Arsene Wenger, who has been for 20, 30 years, being a disaster always.
Okay. But we learned something from disasters as well.
More questions? If not, I think we arrive at the end of this presentation. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you.